Go ahead and get started. Uh, Once again, thank you for joining us this morning. My name is Jeremy Harris. I'm the President and CEO of the Long Beach Area Chamber of Commerce, and we appreciate you again joining us for what the Chamber is calling our Small Business Resiliency and Recovery webinar series. It'll be 3 different webinars throughout the month of April, culminating with a special event at the end of the month, our City National Bank Entrepreneur of the Year. As you know, it's been an unbelievable time, a very challenging time. But this webinar series couldn't come at a better time for our businesses and our members coming on the heels of the Long Beach Recovery Act. And today we've got a fantastic presentation from our very own John Kaiser, the Economic Development Department of the City of Long Beach, and we'll be introducing him shortly. But first, we want to hear from our Chairman of the Board, Mitra Rogers. But before I introduce her, I just want to get into a couple of housekeeping issues for not only this webinar series, but as we move forward. I want to encourage everyone that's on this morning to use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. Typically on any device, it'll be at the bottom in the icon bar. We'll save any questions for the end of the presentation, but please feel free to ask them along the way. And if you want to know more about the Chamber, membership, of course, send us a quick note in the chat and somebody from our team will get right back with you. Please note this webinar is going to be recorded and is recorded and is going to be distributed to all the folks that are attending and also shared with Chamber members and our community partners. If you have any additional questions about the webinar or after, you can reach out to Amanda Donahue at the Chamber. Her information is going to be in the chat box as well. Now at this time, I'd like to introduce our Chair of the Board, Mitra Rogers. She's the Senior Manager, California Government Relations for Boeing Company. She represents the company before local, state, and federal elected officials on legislative and regulatory issues affecting Boeing. In this role, she serves as a primary point of contact between the company and business, community, and elected leaders. I'm happy to call her a friend for many, many years. We won't give that away, right, Mitra? Sure. She's been a wonderful partner in this entire process. As you know, she took over as our chair July 1 of last summer, right in the middle of the pandemic. And because of her leadership, commitment from Boeing, we are a better organization because of it and has allowed us to help a lot of you out there in the community. So with that, happy to turn it over to our chair, Mitra Rogers.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. I appreciate the kind words. This Small Business Recovery and Resiliency series is something I'm really excited about. And today is our kickoff, and it'll take place for the next 2 Thursdays as well, April 8th and April 15th, respectively. The series will identify new strategies and practices for supporting small businesses, developing resiliency, and promoting equity and inclusion in small business recovery, things that are so important to our community and to our mission as a chamber. I'm incredibly excited about this series because we have a great group of panelists and presenters lined up over the next few weeks. What most of you may not know is that this program is saving chamber memberships for many small businesses in Long Beach. A portion of each sponsorship of this series will be going directly to a local small business who was not able to afford their membership during the pandemic. Again, this is something that's very important to our organization, and frankly, some of our businesses need us more than they ever have. So I'm thrilled that we are able to do that. With that being said, we owe a big thank you to Dawn Temple Storage for being the presenting sponsor of this entire series. Because of their support, we are able to bring you this series today and over the next 2 weeks. I want to give another big thank you to our top sponsors, SoCal Gas, Valero, Watson Land Company, and Dignity Health St. Mary Medical Center. Your support is very much appreciated and will go far in Long Beach's economic recovery. Now I'd like to move right along to introduce today's presenter. John Keisler is the Economic Development Director for the City of Long Beach. The mission of his department is to increase equitable economic opportunities for workers, investors, and entrepreneurs in Long Beach through workforce, business, and property development programs. A little bit about John. After completing bachelor's degrees in philosophy and religion at St. Olaf College, John joined Teach for America, teaching middle school literacy and civics in Newark, New Jersey. To address the chronic community challenges facing his students, he turned to a career in city management, working with the League of California Cities and completing his MPA at the USC Price School of Public Policy. In 2005, John was hired as a management assistant by the city of Long Beach and rotated through 4 departments over the course of a decade. He led multiple change management projects throughout the city. This includes serving as the Animal Care Services Bureau Manager, Business Operations Manager for Parks, Recreation, and Marine, CFO for the Police Department, and the city's first Innovation Team Director, which is actually where I first met John and got to work with John. Going a little off script here, John is incredibly bright and just an overall incredibly nice guy. Anytime I'm in a meeting with John, I just know we're in good hands and it's going to end up in a good place that is mutually beneficial. So I personally appreciate working with John, and I'm thrilled that he is kicking off this series for us. Going back on script for a moment, John is a resident of Long Beach. He lives with his beautiful wife, Laura, and his 2 sons, Christopher and Benjamin, and he serves on several civic boards and coaches youth sports. With no further ado, over to you, John.
Thank you, Mitra. And I can't wait to soon someday be able to have those meetings in person with you and Jeremy and Amanda and the whole chamber membership. This has been quite a year. So some of you may ask, what does a guy who studied philosophy and religion have to teach us about the economy? And you know, I'm still finding that out as well. But one of the things that I think is so important about economic development is that it's about people, it's about human behavior, and it's about the connections we make between people, places, and incentives to do things to make the world a better place. So anyway, I'll jump in. I think Amanda's going to help me with this presentation, the slide deck. So if you hear me saying next slide, it's because I don't have the controls. But just jumping in real quick, you know, your economic development department really is structured around the way people make money. So very simply, our mission is to help you make more money, whether you're a resident here, a worker, a business, maybe you own real estate. So if you ever want to reach out to us and see what kind of support we can provide, you'll see that we're organized around you, our customers. Business development, real estate development, workforce development, and we even have new programs in economic and digital inclusion to really focus on those programs and services to help you make money in those key ways that people you know, make money in this economy. So next slide. We also are driven by a strategic vision. We think long term. So when we look at the economy as a department, we ask the experts who are out there in the field. That could be, you know, the hospitality sector, manufacturing, logistics, healthcare, small business owners. And we have experts from all of those different sectors on our Economic Development Commission, which is appointed by the mayor and approved by the city council, 11 people who have set forth a vision for long-term economic growth. So when we talk about what is driving the department, it's people, and it's the experts from the private sector, from the educational sector, from the healthcare sector, all providing their input about what we need to do as a city to increase gross regional product and help our people make more money. Next slide. The other thing that is driving the city and the city council's priorities is how do we maximize the potential of every single person? People are your greatest asset in any economy. We all know that. People say it, but what does that mean? When they, as economists, try to measure the health and the growth of the economy, they use something called gross domestic product, GDP. Gross domestic product is actually made of two things. It's made of people, your population, and productivity. That's it. So how productive are you per capita? That's your GDP. And when we think about that in Long Beach, in our economic development strategy, we think about, are we maximizing the potential, the productive potential of every person in the city? And so what we've discovered over the past couple of years is that, hey, we've got a lot of untapped potential here. And if we're going to grow our gross regional product, because we're a region of the overall domestic economy, if we're going to boost GRP, we've got to maximize the potential of every single person and every single place in the city. And we haven't always done that. So the city council engaged in a framework for racial reconciliation last year to look at what's going on. Why aren't we all producing, or why aren't we all performing at the same levels, and how can we do better? Next slide. So the other thing that drives our economic strategy and is really critical for economics in particular, even for a guy who studied philosophy, is data. We absolutely count the dollars that come in and out of Long Beach and how we can boost the median household income for every person, every race, culture, gender, every geographic area of the city. And it's really critical that we look, when we're trying to boost our GRP, we look at the numbers. So we have also developed a strategy for both collecting this data in real time online through our dashboards, as well as using these numbers by geography and demographics to understand by census tract what's happening in the city with our economy and what we need to do to grow that economic performance at the census tract level. So we also have to use data to drive all of our activities and strategies if we really want to have results. Because at the end of the day, our residents, our business owners, they're going to tell us whether we're performing well based on their bank accounts. Are we helping them to make more money? Next slide. So kind of what's the small business outlook here? Next slide. What are we talking about with regard to this small business recovery and resiliency that the Chamber is sponsoring? And what can we do as partners? As Chamber members, you have an incredible hundreds and hundreds of members who are engaged in the local economy. So how can we work together as a city to both support you, in some cases to remove obstacles, and in some cases where we're responsible for regulating the economy as a local government, what kind of things can we do to get out of the way, to incentivize more investment and increase the number of jobs? So here's what we're up against right now in terms of economic outlook. Number one, for small businesses, we lost a lot of jobs due to COVID-19. And you can see back in March of 2020, where unemployment claims went to all-time historic highs in a very short period of time. So this was more like a natural disaster. This was not your traditional recession where you have a slow contraction or a restructuring of the economy. They usually call them corrections. This was a sudden disaster that spiked within a matter of 2 to 3 weeks. And it was so sudden that ultimately it disrupted every aspect of our economy. So a public health crisis is more like this natural disaster. And it spiked and continued for the past year, where we saw over 150,000 individuals, 150,000 individual residents at some point submit a claim for unemployment insurance benefits as either a business, so the pandemic unemployment assistance, or as an individual worker. So that totaled 250,000 claims over that period of time, 250,000 people. 150,000 people submitting 250,000 claims. Unprecedented numbers. And in the last few months, since December, because we have the most recent data in the world on the Long Beach economy, nobody else has this data, but in the last 3 months, we've still seen 30,000 claims. So we're really focusing in on those 30,000 jobs and who those employers are who had to let those people go as our target for this small business recovery. Next slide. So now that we know our target in terms of this outlook, who are those businesses? What sectors do they provide service or goods? And no surprises that public health disasters, COVID-19, is hammering the face-to-face businesses. So if you're in a face-to-face business, you likely have experienced some sort of either complete or partial shutdown based on health orders that have come down from the state of California. So number one, accommodation and food service. This is related to everything from neighborhood serving restaurants to the restaurants and the hotels and the caterers associated with visitor serving, the convention center, the downtown, the waterfront, et cetera, travel, business or leisure travel. So accommodation and food service continues to be the number one area where we have lost these jobs. So of those 30,000 that I'm talking about, that's our target. 6,000 from accommodation and food service, 3,000 from retail trade, and the list goes on. What I've put in red here really just shows you some of the key areas that we're focusing in on for this outlook, because these are the areas in primarily the private sector that we need to develop the economic recovery strategy around. Next slide. So what about the workers? So we looked at the sector at the last slide, and the workers really are also at a very, very individual level, have a unique experience. So we need to reach them in very, very unique ways. So this is, again, the most recent data you can get from February of 2021. And this is confidential data that we get from the state of California that our partners at the Long Beach Economic Partnership, as well as Cal State Long Beach Office of Economic Research, Go Beach. I did that for Jeremy Harris. They're our partners. We work with them every single day and have weekly meetings where we cull through this data. So 1/3 of all those claims, so over 10,000 of those claims, of course, are working in accommodation, food service, retail trade. So that's a big target. And half of those employees are really younger and less educated. So they're what we would call more elastic, in terms of that the employers are not going to call them back until they absolutely need them to provide these face-to-face services. So we need to find a way to boost the demand, boost the consumer spending in these particular service sectors to bring back the most jobs that we can as quickly as possible. It's also, these are many of these workers are people of color, Latinx primarily, and already make lower wages than those people who are in these higher educated, higher paying jobs that were not as affected by this recession. Next slide. So what about the financial impact? Where is it happening on a geographic basis in the city? Now, this is one of the most fascinating slides because it's so counterintuitive to what people think is going on in the economy. But as I mentioned before, the only way that the chamber, that the city of Long Beach, because we're very much applied research, we're very much professionals in developing programs and services at the technical level, that we need technical data. We need very, very specific geographic data. So what does this map show us? Well, number one, where did all the consumer spending drop off during this recession? Well, because it was COVID-19, it was a public health disaster, and because face-to-face interaction was what made us most vulnerable to the continuation of the virus, spending in experiences, in services, whether it was a gym or a nail salon, it could be a restaurant, those businesses, which typically rely on higher income discretionary spending, were completely shut down. So if you look at the east side of Long Beach, where we have our higher median household incomes, you saw consumers who by and large did not experience much in terms of layoffs, job loss, unemployment. In fact, their income stayed really, really high throughout this pandemic. Yet the consumer spending on that side of town all dropped off dramatically, almost 66% in 90808 as an example. In the lower income areas, the lower median household income areas, we actually saw consumer spending jump and increase. And so why did that happen? Well, this is proof that the strategy of putting supplemental unemployment insurance payments into the bank accounts of lower wage workers actually creates economic transactions. Lower income people spend the money that they get. They pay landlords, they pay small businesses, neighborhood serving retail, grocery stores, takeout foods that were open. Lower income workers tend to spend the money very quickly when they get it. And this is proof. It happened in Long Beach during this recession. It also is evidence that if we can get money into the pockets of consumers and get consumers back out there spending that money, it will go into change hands multiple times. It may go to the small business owner and then to the worker, and then the worker to the landlord, and then the landlord to the lender, et cetera, et cetera. And it may change hands 6, 8 times before it finds its way into somebody who may be up the food chain and doesn't need as much money in the short term. So these are really good strategies for getting economic transactions going and keeping jobs going as well. Next slide. Another really interesting aspect of this recession and what we need to do about it is the geographic and racial impacts. Long Beach is a microcosm of America. We know that we're one of the most diverse cities in the entire country. And we know that ultimately we have many different languages spoken, races, we have new immigrants, we have all kinds of diversity all within our 50 square miles, which presents both great opportunities and also some challenges when it comes to employment and job creation. And ultimately what we're talking about today is consumer spending strategies. So on the left, you'll see where all the unemployment insurance claims came from. As I mentioned before, the east side of Long Beach experienced very little, and in some cases, almost no unemployment. A lot of those households, which are generally $100,000 to $130,000 per year in median household income, actually could work from home. They could continue to deliver services online. We didn't see a big drop off of employment there. On the west side, where many of our service sector workers live, lower income, lower household income areas are typically associated with those service sector jobs, lower wage jobs. And it's a critical part of our economy. But you see how the shutdown of those service sector jobs really impacted the unemployment insurance claims in the northwest and central Long Beach. The other part of this map that is fascinating is on the right side. So in blue, you see where most of our predominantly white and Caucasian communities live. That correlates to higher employment, and that population wasn't hit as hard by this pandemic. In orange, which is our Latinx community, you see where the predominant Latinx community live in Long Beach, and you can see where those unemployment claims are. Same with in purple, the AAPI community, and then of course the green areas where we have a higher density of our Black and African American communities. So we have also this geographic and racial element to our local economy, which affects our business ownership and our workers as well. Next slide. So what do we do about this? Is John just going to explain the problem again, or is he going to help us with some strategies? So number one, I want just setting the stage that there's three phases to these kinds of big recessions. Number one is this immediate stage that we call the relief or the shutdown period, which happened back in March to July. People really couldn't work. Many businesses couldn't open for those first couple months. So different programs are needed to keep people going in their homes when they have no income. My department, of course, which helps manage all of the unemployment insurance benefits for the city, Pacific Gateway, and the Workforce Development Agency, we helped 150,000 people. And it was an incredible workload. We never closed. We never shut a job center. I came to work in a suit and tie every day for the past year because in the relief phase, we were one of the only ways that workers and business owners could get any income when everything was shut down. But then in August, the council took some really, really big actions around what we call the Federal CARES Act. And we started getting grant dollars out as businesses were starting to reopen. And remember, we had kind of a push and pull as we partially reopened the economy. Well, now, starting April 1st, I am happy to announce that today we are starting the recovery phase. And you may say that's ridiculous, but guess what? We went to the orange tier today. We ultimately have seen the COVID-19 infection and hospitalization and fatality numbers moving in the right direction in Southern California. And in particular, we also saw the council take bold action and approve a recovery plan because there's now recovery money coming through the American Recovery Act from the federal government, $1.9 trillion. Next slide. So what we are, just as a highlight, we're moving now from closing down our CARES Act, that transitional money, those transitional programs, and here's just a few of them that my department was managing over the last 6 months. Next slide. To a phase where we have now completed our community outreach. We did 40 hours of listening sessions. We did 3 different roundtables with chamber board members and committee members. We have now recommended a legislative strategy. We've incorporated equity goals because you can see the different experiences of this economic recession from the data that I provided earlier. How do we maximize every demographic and geographic resource we have? And then we brought a final report on March 16th to the City Council saying, hey, this is what we learned and this is what we're recommending. Next slide. So what is it? What is it that we're recommending? Here's some of the groups that we met with, and they told us that a bunch of things that were important to them, but they told us that, hey, you've got to, number one, get the service sector workers vaccinated. You've got to get some money in their pockets. You've got to make the process easier and simpler and faster. You've got to get consumers off the sidelines so that those service sector customers come back. Next slide. And ultimately, here were the major recommendations. So these are from the community. These are from the chamber board and committee members and those 40 groups we met with. Real mix of priorities, but they all support each other. So service sector worker vaccination. I know that many of my neighbors and family members won't go out and start spending money for haircuts and pedicures and dine-in until they know that more of the customers and the workers are both vaccinated. Number two, we need to bulk up our public health and safety resources. And I'm going to show you how we're going to do that to help people experiencing homelessness. And how do we bulk up our community-based partnerships to reach communities in their own language? How do we get the word out there about existing resources? How do we restore trust in government? This has been a big one. The rules kept changing. And I don't trust that if I put the investment into reopening my business that I might not get shut down again. That's too much of uncertainty for me to take the steps toward reopening and recalling my employees. We also heard that tenant and property owner assistance is essential. There's an eviction cliff coming. When all of these eviction moratoriums run out, how are these tenants going to make back payments? How are these landlords going to be able to pay their lenders for the outstanding mortgage or debt that they owe? Next slide. The other 5 of the top 10, needs-based decision-making. Go to the maps, go to the data. This is not a recession that we've ever seen before. We can't just broad brush, give everybody a small check and say, good luck. We've got to be highly targeted. We've got to be sector specific because some sectors did not experience anything and some actually flourished during this particular recession, while others have been decimated. We need to make decisions about where the greatest needs are, and we need to be highly targeted if we want to recover faster than the region or the rest of the country. Revenue generation is king. How do we help small businesses generate more revenue? What can the city do to get those consumers off the sideline, make them feel, safe, and make it a civic duty to spend money? How do they generate the awareness as well as the confidence to get out there and put their private capital back into businesses? That's going to be worth far more than any recovery act that we can provide as a city. How does the city use its own spending and procurement to put money out there to small businesses so that they can bid on government contracts and use that procurement process for business growth? How do we streamline the process, cut the red tape, and make the access to these grants for tenant protection and landlord subsidies and small business grants faster and more effective? And then how do we incorporate some of the past plans we've already completed? I mentioned some of them, but we've got the Everyone In plan and digital inclusion plan and all of these strategies that the community has identified in previous plans are now ready to rock and roll if we can resource them. So next slide. So this is a very, very short summary of 33 individual programs and $57 million worth of recommended investments to the City Council. So this was passed by the City Council on March 16th. The mayor also made an announcement about the American Recovery Act, and we did a big economic forum through the Long Beach Economic Partnership on March 18th. But basically, it's composed of these 33 different recommendations from the community outreach that we did. So you'll see your own ideas in this, but that COVID protection for workers and businesses in the service sectors, how do we give them the support and resources to really engender confidence to get consumers back out and spending money? How do we get direct grants, just working capital into the pockets of businesses and nonprofits? And so there's actually, when you add it all together, over $20 million of this direct relief. $3.5 million for fee waivers, licensing waivers. How do we provide grants to offset those fees that businesses need to pay so that they can reopen without additional costs and liabilities? How do we provide technical assistance? This is where the chamber comes in to provide information and help people to apply for the right resources. How do we use that to leverage county, state, and federal grants and loans that convert to grants? Because those dollars are much bigger than anything we could provide at the city level. So how do we use our money in technical assistance to leverage much, much more? How do we bring visitors and customers into the city to spend money? There's over $1 million there for customer activation to really get people back out there spending their dollars. Tenant relief, grants for rent, back payments, digital inclusion, childcare, hiring youth workers to deliver a lot of these programs, the establishment of incentives through economic empowerment zones, a direct income or a guaranteed income program pilot that we want to launch this year, and then corridor cleanups and beautification. So this is only 1/3 of the overall package, but it's focused on specifically business support. Next slide. So what's next? This is my Sean Lamaki commercial. Sean has always been an inspiration to me and to the chamber all across the state of California. And so I really encourage us to take on that spirit. These programs that I'm talking about will roll out in the next 90 days. This is not a plan that will sit on the shelf. We just need to wait for the federal regulations to come down. We need to wait for the grant agreements to come down and be approved by council. And then we need to see the money flowing from the federal government, which will likely be happening over this quarter. So April, May, June, let's get all those agreements in place. Let's get that money in hand and let's get it on the street by July 1st. So this is happening. This is next. We'll be opening the Sean Lamaki Center for Innovation down on Pine Avenue. And I think it'll be just one tiny thing we're doing to symbolically reopen the economy and get people excited, create an energy source for the Long Beach recovery. Next slide. We also need partnerships. So the Chamber of Commerce, major partner of ours. We also have the Long Beach Economic Partnership doing certain things. We need the Center for Economic Inclusion doing certain things. We're launching the second cohort of the Long Beach Accelerator and bringing in new companies and startups. We're helping our students at the university become entrepreneurs and launch their own businesses. We're working with the Council of Business Associations to help 5,000 plus small businesses and property owners to reactivate their commercial corridors. But the chambers are a really important part of this because not only does the chamber provide citywide reach to different types of businesses across all sectors, but we're going to need the haves are going to need to get involved with our buy local campaigns and engage with the marketing and promotion of these resources and get the word out there to help those have-nots who really have been hammered by this recovery, and ultimately those of us who are fortunate enough to have maintained our jobs. We got to get out there, and it's like our civic duty this campaign to spend the money we've got to help our fellow business owners get going again and have the best quarters on record. Next slide. So with that, how does this roll out? Federal guidelines, April, business plans for our programs that I was just describing, grant agreements maybe in May from the federal government, the application process maybe kickstart at the local level for a lot of those dollars that I just shared with you. We're hoping to start seeing federal funding in June and really be able to make those local grant awards at the end of this second quarter. So it's over the next 90 days. It's going to come fast. And hopefully people will start seeing those dollars in their bank account by July. We're out there faster than any city in America. Nobody else has already completed their community outreach, completed their economic studies. approved their programs from council. So although this seems like another 90 days, how can we wait? I do want you to know that the mayor and city council have been extremely aggressive, actually approving a plan before the president even signed the bill. So we are out front. We are ready to go, and we're going to do it together. With that, I actually want to turn it back over to Mitra and Jeremy, because I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
John, fantastic job as always. We appreciate a lot of great data and information in there, and I know we'll be sharing this with our attendees, and then of course the greater business community along with our membership. So as questions start coming in, I'll kind of kick it off. But before I do, there's something that you highlighted right there at the end, and I think it bears repeating again, is that the city of Long Beach, through our leadership at the top, on all the way down through your department, and quite frankly, at City Hall, they were really forward thinking on how do we get recovery dollars back into the hands and pockets of our businesses and our community members. And I just need to say once again, a wonderful job to you and your department, of course, to city leadership, mayor on down, because like you said, Long Beach is ahead of the game compared to any other city out there, and trying to really plan. And while you pointed out that we're about a 90 days out here from a rollout, those other cities are going to be way, way past that as well. So I think it just bared repeating again, and for our members and our business community to understand what a momentum task that was and will continue to be. But you can count on the chamber alongside you to continue to push that out in any way that we can assist there. So I needed to start with that. I'll kick off a couple of questions here, generalized. You talked about, hey, today we're going into the orange tier. I'll also mention it's Major League Baseball opening day, but it's here nor there. So it's a great day. A lot of excitement, new rules, new regulations, the laxing of some of the health orders and the health requirements of our businesses. Still encouraging folks to stay safe, be vigilant as the vaccines roll out and everything. Any takeaways you can share with moving from, say, the purple to the red and now to the orange that businesses need to be aware of? Certainly there's all kinds of different rules, and the chamber will push all that out, but anything you want to kind of elaborate on now that we're in the orange tier, and what does that really mean here in, say, in the next 4 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, and as it aligns with, again, vaccines being rolled out as well?
Absolutely. So thank you for that, Jeremy. First and foremost, the chamber has been an amazing engine and a force for good. Organizing roundtables, bringing together industry experts to inform and shape this plan. Second, let's start thinking about yellow. We always got to think ahead about how we get to the next level. And one thing that's amazing about what's happened here in Southern California is that there are unfortunately, many states going backwards. They actually are seeing cases rise. They're seeing hospitalization rise. That's going to be an anchor on their economic growth for a long time, because even though it feels real good right now to get out there early, if their workers aren't protected, if their small businesses are not open, if the consumer is the key here. We all say customers are king, because if the customer does not come to a place like Long Beach, which is really anchored, no pun intended, in our great amenities and attractions on the waterfront, our convention center, all the visitor serving stuff we do, if we don't get those customers in and they don't feel excited and safe, if we don't speak to them about how our vaccination system here in Long Beach is better than anywhere else in the country. It's been, mayor and city council, Tom Modica, the city manager, they've done such a phenomenal job. We did 4,600 vaccines just last Saturday, one day. So we need your help first and foremost, so that the whole nation knows that this is the safest place to spend money. Safest place. And you need to feel like when you go into that business, or you go into that convention center, you go, into that aquarium, that you're in the safest place in America to take your kids, and that ultimately spending your money and coming to Long Beach is going to be the most important way that we get going faster, and then we never go back.
That's a great point, John. I couldn't echo that any louder than you just did. I know The Long Beach Economic Partnership has done a wonderful job in the past quarterly forum, explain that exact same point. We are going to be the safest place for you to come spend your money and also to come make money. And that's what we need to get out to our business community. With the help of Amanda here, I want to go back a couple of slides. If she can find the slide that just had the breakdown of the economic assistance, the recovery dollars. So you had the 57 million, and then you had it kind of broken down. There's a couple of slides back. Here we go. Any message that you want to give to our small business owners and business owners in general, and the business community in general, but really our small business owners, because we know that those are the ones that were hit the hardest across all various sectors, of course, demographics, of course. Any takeaway why these grants and the application process is still being put together, and as this rolls out, what should they be paying attention to in this list here?
Absolutely, yeah. So number one, you're not alone. Just know this. You have through the Chamber, you have through the Small Business Development Center, you have through the 5704 Biz hotline, access to support. You have access to help and to experts who know how to navigate everything from PPP loans, which convert to grants, to the state program, the California Relief Bill. You have access to far more resources than I think you might realize. So number one, you're not alone, and don't do this alone. Number two is that none of these programs on their own are a panacea. They are not going to help you to survive and recover on their own. They all work together. So what I mean by that is that if we can get money out quickly, just for working capital to help with some cash flow, we know that $5,000, $10,000, $25,000 grant is not going to be the answer to your long-term success and sustainability. But if we can couple that with 25 more from the county, 25 more from the state, maybe a PPP loan that gets you 100,000 and it's forgivable to get some employees back. But also, we might be able to help you with the workforce support. We may be able to help you with some technology grants for digital inclusion to get your e-commerce platform going. We've got all kinds of stuff that address different aspects of your recovery. So you're not alone, and these programs don't work alone. So reach out, engage with us, engage with your colleagues, and let's all try to grab as many dollars as we can from the government programs, as well as the private sector money that we can get from each other and from our customers.
That's great. I appreciate that, John. Excellent points there. You talked also during your presentation that, April 1, here we are. Today's the start of that recovery. I know a press release just went out this morning or maybe mid-morning about the extensions of certain programs around, business fees and licensing, parking tickets, of course, I think we're mentioned in there for our community members, of course. Anything else you want to tackle on that? And I hate to put you on the spot because I know it wasn't really part of your presentation here, but we are starting recovery. So just curious if you wanted to elaborate there.
Yeah, you know me. I always want to elaborate. So I was a philosophy major. No, I think the short of it is that yes. So city is taking these are bigger programs that are in process. But we've also got a number of things, several programs the council approved last year that have been reauthorized. So there's another round of business license grants that will help you to pay last year's business license fees. Maybe you didn't pay them because you deferred them. Well, we'll be opening up that application in April for you to start applying for those fees, inspection fees, anything related to the government. Let's get you grants to cover that. Number two, all of those programs that you mentioned are again meant to take little bite-size take bite-size problems off your plate. So it could be the extension of the outdoor dining, the patios and the parklets. Those have been extended this week to June 30, and we're going to advocate to extend them longer. We may see other types of fees that or regulations that get momentarily sidelined so that we can make sure that we don't add to the problem. I didn't even mention, that $28 million for tenant relief is for about $2 million of that is for commercial tenants. So reach out to us. That money is actually available now. That's coming faster than some of these other dollars that are coming down from the American Recovery Act. So I just want you to know that it's not necessarily the Recovery Act. It's a bunch of other programs that are already in play. And if you call us 5704-BIZ, we might be able to help you find something that already exists and is ready for you today.
Thank you, John. And I'm going to piggyback on that and say, just because you guys can't do it all by yourself, that if our folks, there's lots of information here in terms of a lot of the grants and the funding that's available. Please reach out to our team at the Chamber. We've got a lot of this information up on our website. If you can't get through to John in his shop, because I know they're doing yeoman's job over there and all kinds of work every single day, let us know and we can help connect you with other partners as well. So we want to help you with that, John. And along those kind of guidelines as well, and again, I'm going a little bit off script from the presentation, but I'm kind of curious that you've been working at this, I want to say, more than a year, essentially taking no time away vacation wise, and your department was, on the much smaller side going into this thing, probably still is too small to be handling a lot of this stuff. So again, you guys are working unbelievable hours. What have you learned through this process, through your economic development department? And what are you looking forward to as you move forward that might be able to, better assist you all do your job? But at the same time, we know you guys are helping a lot of our businesses in the community. So I'm just kind of curious to hear, is there any major takeaways through this past year and now going into what we're calling the recovery year?
Absolutely. So a couple things. Number one, innovation is born out of crisis. So this country, what has made America strong is the innovation and the grit that comes out of crises. So if you look back, comparing this era right now to the 1920s and what we went through with a pandemic, 1918, World War I, we went through multiple recessions, which led up to, of course, World War II and the Great Depression, that our economy expanded more than any time in our history after World War II with massive stimulus programs, and included infrastructure bills. Some of this was Truman, some of this was Eisenhower. Massive infrastructure bills and investments and stimulus programs for the interstate highway system, transportation. Also huge USC, my alma mater, tripled in size just because of the GI Bill. Yeah. Homeowner assistance, all kinds of programs that the federal government had never tried before as a result of crises. And our economy expanded more than it ever in our history, and for longer than ever in history. So what I've learned is that, number one, we change. Our economies change when we have these massive shocks to the system. We also start to recognize incredible vulnerabilities that exist in our economic systems when we are challenged with these big shocks. So number one is that innovation is born out of crisis. Also, economic strength and resilience is born out of crisis. If we take this moment to make the massive investments that we need to make to both shore up the things that were working and change the things that weren't. So I'll leave you with that. But information technology, mobility, and education are the three things. Those are the three things that have fundamentally changed the course of history, economically, socially, and politically throughout our world history. And we're on the cusp of making investments in all those three things because of COVID-19.
Well, John, I think we're going to leave it there. I mean, that's a great way to close out today's webinar. Again, we appreciate your time and everything you do for us. I'll give you a go Trojans since you gave me a go Beach. Again, the partnership here is invaluable. We appreciate, again, everything you're doing over there and what you're doing for our business community. And again, for sharing all of the information today. We're looking forward to these programs being rolled out, the grants becoming available, and again, call on us as a partner to get that out to our businesses. You can certainly do that. I want to thank everybody today for joining today's webinar once again. I want to give another big shout out to our presenting sponsor, Don Temple Storage. We can't do it without you. So thank you so much. Summer, you've been great. We appreciate your leadership as well. And of course, a big thank you to SoCal Gas, Valero, Watson Land Company, Dignity Health, St. Mary Medical Center for being our top sponsors and allowing us to present this today, and of course, into the future here over the next couple of weeks. Hopefully you got most of your questions answered, but if you have some follow-up or have any other questions regarding today's presentation, please feel free to reach out to the Chamber staff and we'll get those back to you. As a reminder, we'll be sending out a recap about this presentation and a recording, so you can certainly look for that. I also want to invite you to attend next week's webinar, which will be taking place Thursday, April 8th at 10:30, which will include our presenters, Ryan Cora, and Dana Buchanan with Prime Alchemy, Ryan Cora with Cora Events. And they're going to talk about how they shifted their business model from last year and what they're looking at as they move forward to the future. Two wonderful individuals in our community who've done a lot for a lot of people. So we're really looking forward to hearing from them. And then as we move through our webinar series, you're going to hear about how we kind of are going to end the series with what does recovery look like for all of you. John set the tone today. We're hoping to have more information to share by that webinar series. And then again, we'll recap it at the end of the month with our City National Bank Entrepreneur of the Year honor. And we'll get to recognize some wonderful individuals from entrepreneurs, corporations, community members. So April is truly a small business and business really resiliency and recovery month. We put this program together about 6 months ago, not knowing what recovery was going to look like, hoping that in April of 2021, we would be on our way. And I'm just so grateful for the leadership in our city to get us started off on the right foot with the passage of the Long Beach Recovery Act last month. So once again, thank you all for joining us. John, thank you, especially our chair, Mitra Rogers of Boeing, thank you. And then we'll be in touch, folks, and we'll see you again next week. Thank you so much.